So, the next step in this then, we frame the issue, we understand the issue. The next step is brainstorming. And in each one of these steps we've done has a strong area of practice behind it. Framing, like I said, the typical framing training would go probably at least 3 full days. Here it's maybe been more than an hour. So I don't want you to feel that, wow, I didn't quite get this yet, because I totally understand that. But get it enough to kind of define, the real key is defining the problem. Once you define it, then we'll start coming up with choices around it. Okay, and I'm going to we'll give several different ways to do that, to generate choices. And this is actually probably the most nonverbal part of what we'll be doing. We'll be doing some other nonverbal consultation later. But this will allow us to create choices with full participation in the group. Okay? So, Abdu'l-Baha tells us that it is an axiomatic fact, meaning foundational. This is indisputable, that while you meditate, you are speaking with your own spirit. In that state of mind, you put certain questions to your spirit, and the spirit answers. That's what we're doing with the frame. The light breaks forth, and the reality is revealed. Through the faculty of meditation, man attains to eternal life. Through it, he receives the breath of the Holy Spirit. The bestowal of the Spirit is given in reflection and meditation. I often ask folks, where do new things come from? Where does something new come from? Where does a thought nobody's ever had before come from?
Conquest.
No, it comes from meditation. It comes from, and so let's take a second, and I just want to hear from you, because we're going to watch a video and do some. Well, actually, we're going to watch the video first, and then we're going to do a meditative activity. Now, in your handout, you have a number of quotes. Let's take a minute and go around and read those, actually. And we'll just begin right here. And Bonnie, can you go ahead and begin for us? We'll just read through I'll hold the microphone while we do that. Let's just read through the quotes we have on questions.
Man's mind, once stretched by a new idea, never regains its original dimensions.
What we're going to do is watch a brief video, and then we're going to do an exercise around that.
Brainstorming is the most widely implemented creativity technique of all time. It was pioneered by this ad executive named Alex Osborne. In a series of best-selling business books in the late 1940s and early 50s, he outlined this technique called brainstorming, which basically there's just one rule to brainstorming, which is don't criticize. Whatever you do in a brainstorming meeting, you cannot criticize the ideas of other people, that all ideas are good ideas. And the assumption behind this is that the imagination is very meek and shy and fragile. And if it's worried about being criticized, it'll just clam up and it won't be able to free associate at all. But the only problem with brainstorming is that it just doesn't work. Psychologists have known this for 60 plus years. Study after study has shown that you put people in a room and tell them to brainstorm, they're going to come up with fewer ideas and less original ideas than those same people who might work by themselves. So brainstorming, we become less than the sum of our parts.
Don't think that 9 people sitting around the table with their hands folded, are going to be as creative as they could be. So let's talk about, when are you most creative? Okay. When are you most creative? Sure, when you get your best ideas. Yes?
Yeah. When I'm sleeping or first thing in the morning?
Okay. Sleeping or... Yes?
When I'm hiking.
When you're hiking? Okay, those are 2 very good answers, because what I tell folks, you're most creative when you're in nature or in that time between sleeping and waking, right? Or, as Abdu'l-Baha might tell us, when we're meditating, when our mind is in a meditative state. And that's when that happens. Literally what they found in the research is people in nature And I really think the reason for it is the randomness in nature, but just a walk in a park really gets you in a much more creative frame of mind. Oh, what I think is happening is that the randomness of nature is moving all throughout our brain and firing in many different areas as we see and observe things. And that's just making connections for us, connecting in different ways. What we're going to do now is, and this is something new, and this is just because of the beauty of Desert Rose, I want you in complete silence because of what Abdu'l-Baha said, that we can't both speak and meditate at the same time. I want you to go out in silence. Think about your frame. Think about your frame. Don't talk to anybody about it. If you need to take something to write on, I would suggest doing so. Write down as a thought comes. But I don't want you engaging with any other person, because that'll break the connection. Okay? And I want you to just go out and walk outside, in the grounds, in nature, for, like I said, 5 to 7 minutes. Write down whatever comes to your mind about your frame. I want you to think about the frame that you have. What ideas come to your mind? So let's go ahead. What is your one best idea regarding your frame? What inspiration came to you as an idea that would be within the frame that you've defined? Okay, and when you're done, within your groups, I want you to pass your idea to the person on your right. And how would you improve that idea? You don't have to write anything, but just what occurs to you that you think might make this a better idea. What might be missing from the idea? What else would you like to share? Don't change what you've been given. Only make it better, if you'd like. Let's talk about this for a second. What happened here? Describe what's gone on. Not what you wrote for your ideas, but what did you notice as part of this?
I got to see how other people were thinking about the frame that we came up with.
Okay.
And I saw the diversity of ideas, understanding, and thought.
Okay, so you saw a real diversity of thought.
Yes.
Okay. What else happened here? Well, I want you to think about what just took place. Abdu'l-Baha tells us that in silence the spirit is revealed.
It was an evaluation exercise. It was also an encouraging.
Okay, it focused on building the positive. It focused on, well, what would make this idea even better? Okay. Who participated in this?
Everybody.
When did you participate in this?
All together.
All the time. You got a chance to see what happened to the ideas as they traveled around. What did you notice?
I noticed that they were more personal. They were more individual.
Okay, they were more individual ideas instead of ideas that were feeling like they were group ideas? Or, okay.
There was more of the individual ideas coming out there, I guess.
Okay, what did you notice about the meditation exercise?
I loved it. That was my best part. I would be able to connect more with that than any other part, which I've struggled with mostly. But this one, out in nature, I could see.
Okay.
I could see the mountains. It took me, this is the goal. I have to keep my eye on the goal to get there.
Okay.
So
It expanded your way of thinking.
it did.
Okay. What else about the meditation exercise?
You have to listen.
You listen to what?
Listen to around our surround.
Okay. All you could do was listen, right?
This old world order culture has a tendency to cause a lot of constriction. It's a violence-based contention. And when you release or detach from that, the spirit has a tendency to allow itself to let go. And that's where, when you open, that's when the communication comes in. So that's what doing that to me does.
Okay, so it gave us a degree of freedom, right? When you step away from the pressures of a group, you were no longer, even if it's just body language, oh, we have to decide this, we need to do this, or they want to do this, or they want to, you're constantly surrounded by other people's needs in some way. And here it just freed you from that. There was no other concern related to that, right?
I loved some of the wording and stuff that we were using, but I also volunteer out in the community, and I know that when you use certain things, it turns some people off. For instance, at the Cancer Support Center, we cannot have a meeting and have a prayer, per se, but there's ways around things like that. So we wanted spiritual vibrancy, and as a Baha'i, yes, that's beautiful and everything. And when I went and I sat down, I says, I don't want to create, I want unity. And so I've been keeping my mouth shut about the spiritual, because that is a turnoff in trying to get unity in the community. So all I can think of is what we need to do is train the youth in morals, because they have none anymore. And all I can think of, and I guess that's what Book 5 does. And so doing this exercise has made me, each one of us came up with very, very similar things about using Book 5, about using the Virtues Projects, and things. It's like, it's a light switch comes on. It's kind of like we're working with a dimmer switch at low, and now it's bright.
Okay, yeah, it turns up the light in some ways. Okay, I want you to think about, really reflect on this. We don't often, and this was only 5, maybe 7 minutes. I mean, you weren't out there a long time. Silence, though, seems like an eternity sometimes. Oh my gosh, this is going to go on forever. We have business to do. Gosh, we shouldn't spend our time in silence like this. But it generates many more ideas when people are able to silently reflect. I do this in a number of different ways. Remember in emotional intelligence, when we talked about the fact that just having the ability to kind of step away for a period of time dissipates the emotional intensity. I almost think it allows you to think in clearer ways. It gives you the freedom that, hey, no one else is vying for my time. I'm not having to compete with anybody else. All I can focus on is what I'm really, what's really important to me, what I want to carry forth out of this. So it gives people an opportunity, but the aspects of this from a consultation standpoint, everyone participated equally, 100%. Even if you couldn't think of anything to say, you had the opportunity to participate fully. Okay? Everybody had a chance to reflect on what everyone else said. Now let me give you one example of how I use this. I was working with a group, a Native American group, and it was about 30 people. And I was asked to come in because they were having conflict in their education department. And that's all I knew. That's all I knew. You saw before, we talked about children's classes. All you knew was they had issues with behavior, attendance, and teachers. That's all you knew. I want to really reinforce the fact that knowledge isn't always helpful to resolve difficult issues. You need factual knowledge, certainly. But too much knowledge in the work I've done only prejudices me in the parties' involvement. There was one time I was given briefs by both parties. And one party gave a brief, and I read through both briefs, and it was the last time I ever did that. Because I said, oh, well, this party's right. Your mind just naturally does that. Even though I'm neutral, it's the mediation role. I read it, and of course this party's right. And then when they both appeared in person, it was exactly the opposite. I saw the party that I thought was right was just being less than sincere, and that led me to believe they were being less than honest, and that led me to believe they weren't really to be trusted, and that meant I needed to listen to what the other party's saying, because there's got to be some. And the other party was not able to express themselves well in writing, but they were able to do it verbally. So one of the things to take out of this is not everyone can, writes to the same degree. Not everybody speaks to the same degree. Give people different ways, and we'll actually go through other ways of participating like this. But keep in mind, in consultation, if this is a wonderful technique, and let me finish the story about the Native American colony. This is a wonderful technique when you have individuals that might have unequal participation. Say, let's take a minute, let's all write down and share it with each other in writing and just pass it around. Now, the Native American story, I was asked to come in because of conflict in their education department. I came into the room, there was about 30 chairs, 30 people sitting around in a circle, and conflict in Native American society tends to be a spectator sport, right? So everyone is gathered around watching because they all want to see the conflict. I began by saying to everybody in the circle, we began with a native blessing. Let's begin with a native blessing. And I said, everyone take out a piece of paper, and I want you to write down your one best idea for the education department. I didn't bother with exploring the truth. I didn't bother to focus on anything with ground rules. I didn't frame what was going on. I just went straight to this. So write down your one best idea. And I said, now pass it to the person next to you. How would you make that idea better? Pass it again. And we passed it for 7 generations, from the Native American standpoint. And then I said, let's take your ideas, group them and post them on the wall in whatever way you'd like. And there are always 3 types of groupers. There are those that have to group immediately, those that like to group at the end, and those that like to have coffee. Okay. So people went up and they moved these around, and so they grouped them together, and we named the groupings and we prioritized the groupings. And this took less. This is a group of 30 people, highly conflict. This took only about 20 minutes. Okay? So we had a complete prioritized list of positive goals for the future of the education department. That doesn't mean you ignore what's happened, but we can talk about what's happened as we build a better future. And people will talk about it in a much better way. Okay? They'll talk about the future in a much better way. So, the point here, remember in the video, what did they do in the video? What did they do in the video? Remember? He said that the science has shown that people thinking separately are able to generate much more creative and better ideas than those thinking in a group. So, I want to say, why are you ever thinking of ideas in a group? Now, we're going to visit the second half of that when we evaluate those ideas. The second half of that, and that's where Clash of Differing Opinions comes in, and that's the second half of the video that you haven't seen yet. I showed you the first half of the video, so we understand the role of meditation. The second half of the video shows you the importance of vigorous debate. Okay, and so we'll take a look at that in a minute. So, what I want you to do now, you've got the ideas, you pass them around. I want you to talk about, as a group, we're actually going to we're going to move to our next section, and I want you to consider the ideas that you have. Don't change and don't really add to what's been written so far, but reflect on the ideas in your group as a whole. I do not want you to take ownership of your idea or feel you need to get your idea back. The other thing I wanted to mention here, what happens when you pass your idea?
When you give it to the group.
You're detaching from it. You're giving it to the group, right? You're detaching. And as your idea goes around, it takes on a life of its own. And you may not even recognize your idea anymore. Okay? Which makes it a much better consultative environment for discussing ideas. Because as much as we try not to, it's still our idea. We still feel that idea. But when the idea then has become enriched by the contributions from the group, you no longer have to worry about even retaining ownership of that idea. And you can discuss all of the ideas equally. Now, we're going to do that in many different ways, but in the next segment right here, I want you to consider the spiritual principles in each of these ideas. So we're going to leave the ideas as is. Don't add to them, don't change them, don't modify them.